If Lila never killed Sergeant Doakes, Dexter's secret could have exploded, and his entire life might have burned down with it. Today, I'm breaking down how a single decision had one of the biggest impacts on the future of the show. But first, we need to go back to see what really happened to Doakes. What happened to Doakes? After divers discovered the underwater burial site Dexter had been using to hide the bodies of his victims,
when they stumbled on what appears to be an underwater graveyard in a crevice off the coast of Miami.
The Miami Metro Homicide Department began a hot pursuit to catch the killer. Dubbed the Bay Harbor Butcher, Dexter found himself locked in a race against the department to keep his habit of killing people under wraps. Due to the gravity of the Butcher's crimes, the FBI, headed by Frank Lundy, came in to help Miami Metro solve the case. Together, the FBI and the Homicide Department were steadily getting closer and closer to the truth. At the same time, Sergeant Doakes was also trailing Dexter. This was because, following the investigation into the ice truck killer, Doakes became even more suspicious of Dexter than he already was. He followed Dexter around religiously after that investigation ended, never giving him the time or space to practice his killing ritual as he needed. Even when Dexter tried throwing Doakes off the trail by pretending to be in Narcotics Anonymous, which is where he met Lila, Doakes was impossible to shake. Eventually, Doakes found out that Dexter was lying about being a drug addict.
Because why would someone pretend to be an addict if he's not? Unless he's got something a hell of a lot worse to hide.
And became even more determined than ever to find out what he was really doing. In an attempt to get Doakes off his back, Dexter made it look like the sergeant attacked him at work, leading to Doakes being suspended right in the middle of the investigation into the Bay Harbor Butcher. Normally, this would have been a good thing for Dexter, but in reality, it only freed Doakes up to follow him even more closely than before. In fact, one night, while Dexter was out killing Santos Jimenez, one of the men who murdered his mother, Doakes went as far as breaking into Dexter's apartment. There, he discovered the blood slides Dexter kept as trophies from each kill. This was evidence that could have nailed Dexter, but due to their troubled history, it was imperative that Doakes actually verify that the blood on the slides belonged to the victims of the Butcher. Otherwise, it would just look like another attempt on Doakes' part to hurt Dexter. But after a tense meeting with Lundy, Doakes was fingered as a potential suspect in the Bay Harbor Butcher case. As a result, his car was searched before he could get the slides tested, allowing the police to find and retrieve them. This made Doakes the primary suspect in the BHB case. Then, with the police hunting him down, it was more necessary than ever for Doakes to prove that Dexter was the actual killer. He tracked Dexter's comings and goings and found the dismembered parts of his latest victim in garbage bags, the signature of the Bay Harbor Butcher. This confirmed what Doakes already believed. It really had been Dexter all along. But when Doakes confronted Dexter and tried to bring him in to answer for his crimes, Dexter was able to get the jump on him. He captured Doakes and locked him away in a remote cabin that belonged to his most recent victim, Santos Jimenez. Dexter knew that he couldn't keep Doakes locked up forever, especially with the police searching high and low for the sergeant. He considered killing him, but ultimately decided to frame him as the Butcher instead of breaking Harry's code.
There's no way people are gonna believe I did this shit.
Those were the only two ways out that Dexter could conceive of at the time that would not result in him getting the death penalty. He could not have predicted that Lila would steal the GPS from his car and use it to track his recent locations, leading her to the cabin where he was holding Doakes. When Lila did arrive at the cabin, she found Doakes locked in the cage.
I'm Sergeant James Doakes.
He tried to reason with her and let her know that Dexter was a killer.
Because I found out that he's a fucking Bay Harbor Butcher. Please just open this fucking gate.
But even that information did not stop her from being obsessively in love with Dexter. In order to keep Doakes from exposing Dexter and getting him sent away for good, Lila impulsively set fire to the cabin and turned on the gas. She locked James in and fled, sealing his fate. The cabin exploded with Doakes inside, killing him as Lila looked on from a safe distance. The next morning, the local police and the FBI were on the scene, where they discovered a corpse that matched the description of one James Doakes.
Damn it, Masuka, is it Doakes?
They also found the corpse of a man Dexter had killed when he was planning to use a new victim to frame Doakes as the Bay Harbor Butcher. In the end, Dexter's plan worked out in a roundabout way. With the exception of Maria LaGuerta, the local and federal authorities all believed Doakes to be the Butcher. and that remained the legacy of the late Sergeant James Doakes for many years. Because of Lila's move to kill Doakes, Dexter was spared from having to make any difficult decisions for himself. Had she not been there, he still had a few options, but all of them would have left him in a very vulnerable position. Lila coming in to rescue Dexter allowed him to avoid the mental, emotional, and legal ramifications of his actions, so it's interesting to think about what may have happened without her unexpected intervention. Alternative number 1. Dexter frames Doakes as the Bay Harbor Butcher. Once Doakes knew his secret, Dexter did consider killing him, but after deciding that killing the sergeant would be too far outside of the boundaries of his father's code, Dexter landed on an alternative solution. In the show, Dexter decided to frame Sergeant Doakes as the Bay Harbor Butcher, rather than take his life. But how would that have actually panned out if Doakes had survived Lila? The only thing that could have followed the frame job that Dexter had in mind would be a lengthy and arduous criminal trial. Doakes being alive would mean that he would not go down as a serial killer without a fight. As Dexter worked to frame him, Doakes would have undoubtedly been professing his innocence the whole time and demanding that the investigation shift its focus back to Dexter. Doakes had plenty of righteous fury that could have convinced quite a few people to at least hear him out regarding his innocence. There is no doubt that people like Maria LaGuerta and others who respected James on the force would have been conflicted on the matter at the very least. And that's assuming that they didn't believe him completely right away. As Doakes worked to exonerate himself, Dexter would have been thrust into the spotlight and forced to answer a lot of difficult questions. For a person like Dexter, having people dig into his past is one of the worst things that could happen.
My living room is a crime scene. You know who I am, what that means to someone like me.
He had a lot to hide, and with a thorough enough investigation, his entire life could have been torn apart. When Dexter's past is analyzed and challenged by those around him, he is left floundering and often finds himself in a bigger dilemma as he tries to manipulate his way out of the situation. For example, when Dexter framed his girlfriend's abusive ex-husband, Paul Bennett, as a relapsing drug user to get him sent back to prison, Paul knew instantly that something wasn't right. During his marriage to Rita, Paul had abused her several times, but they had 2 children together, so he remained a part of her life even after the divorce. And when he found himself in jail with a head injury and no recollection of what had happened, he needed Rita's help. Paul repeatedly called her, begging her to look for a shoe that he believed he had lost in the struggle.
Can you look for the shoe one more time?
That would prove that Dexter had abducted him. Though initially dismissive of his claims, Rita eventually found the shoe.
I found the shoe, okay?
Which was enough evidence to back up what Paul had been saying. When she confronted Dexter about his role in Paul's reincarceration,
he's back in jail.
Dexter knew he couldn't admit to what he really was, nor the things he had been doing. Instead, by claiming to be a drug addict in need of help recovering,
Are you an addict?
Yes, I have an addiction.
Dexter saw an opportunity to remain free and keep Rita from discovering his double life. Inevitably, this solution only led to a world of trouble for Dexter. He had to join Narcotics Anonymous, deepening his web of lies and placing him in the sights of the deranged arsonist Lila West. Likewise, when Deborah walked in on him killing Travis Marshall,
How are you so perfectly prepared to kill Travis?
Dexter tried his best to lie his way out of the situation.
What about the knives?
Travis had them with them. They were his knives. I don't know where he got them from.
He told Deborah anything to keep her from learning that he was indeed the Bay Harbor Butcher. He needed the killing of Travis to seem like a momentary lapse in sanity and not like it was part of his regular pattern of behavior. But with enough time away from him, Deborah was able to gain a clearer understanding of what must have happened that night at the church. She tore Dexter's apartment apart, looking for answers, and just like Doakes, she eventually found them. She confronted Dexter and was forced to face the truth that her beloved brother was in fact a serial killer.
Are you his serial killer?
Yes.
Dexter, try as he might, could not pull the wool over Deb's eyes, and in his attempts to do so, he only further alienated her. Essentially, Dexter is not that great at pleading his own case to those who have good instincts. Even Deborah, the person who loved him the most and knew him the longest, could not be convinced of his innocence when he tried to persuade her.
Oh my God, I can't believe this.
Just imagine how well that would have gone over in a courtroom in front of a jury full of strangers. In this alternate reality where Lila does not kill Doakes and Dexter also chooses to spare the sergeant's life, the end result would have most likely been Dexter being exposed for what he truly was, a killer. He could have hired powerful attorneys and professed his own innocence, but it is unlikely that it would have panned out in his favor. Doakes was hell-bent on exposing Dexter, even before he knew that he was the butcher, and before he was locked in a cage for days on end, while Dexter devised a plan to try and ruin his life. Odds are that Doakes would have beaten his case, and if not, he would have appealed a guilty verdict until the truth was revealed. Dexter would have been discovered and sentenced to death, unless, of course, Doakes was silenced. Which brings us to the second possible alternative, Dexter choosing to kill Sergeant Doakes. Alternative number 2, Dexter kills Doakes himself. If Lila had not killed Doakes for him, it's reasonable to assume that Dexter may have done it on his own. It's made clear that Harry's code would not allow for the killing of Doakes, a man whom Dexter saw as relatively innocent. However, Dexter has been known to make similar judgment calls over the course of the series. After all, the first rule of the code is don't get caught. In order to meet that standard, Dexter would go on to try and kill Captain Maria LaGuerta when she got too close to figuring him out. Maria never accepted the idea that Doakes was the Bay Harbor butcher, even after his body was found blown to bits right outside of the cabin he died in. She refused to let her hunch about Doakes being innocent go. And given that Deborah, Angel, and Agent Lundy already discovered that the butcher was a member of the homicide department,
Bay Harbor Butcher is one of our own.
she had a pretty short list of potential suspects. After discovering a bloodslide at the crime scene of Travis Marshall's death, Maria knew she had been right all along. The Bay Harbor Butcher was still active and at large. Eventually, she was able to narrow that list down to Dexter. After weeks and weeks of work and investigation, Maria almost managed to trick Dexter into revealing himself as the butcher. She pushed for Hector Estrada, the cartel lord behind the death and dismemberment of Dexter's mother, to be released early from prison.
I just checked with Estrada's parole officer. You were behind his release from prison?
She lured Dexter to Estrada, planning to catch him in the act of killing the man. But after Dexter realized her plan,
She set me up. You're not the one who was set up.
both he and Estrada were gone before she could apprehend him. In their ongoing chess match, LaGuerta arrested Dexter anyway, and in turn, he made it appear as if she was lying to frame him all along.
You son of a bitch. You set me up.
Maria.
Can I go now?
Dexter's plan worked flawlessly, but LaGuerta wasn't done. On New Year's Eve, she again followed Dexter to the shipping yard after getting a call from Estrada. Forced by Dexter, Estrada called Maria and told her that he was being held in the shipping yard once again and needed her help. The tables were entirely turned though, with Dexter being the one luring her to the shipping container this time. When Maria arrived, Dexter had already killed Estrada and was preparing to kill her too. Harry's voice saying, "Don't get caught," ringing through his mind the whole time, no doubt. When Maria returned to the shipping container, Dexter immediately incapacitated her, cleared his table of Estrada's corpse, and began preparing it for her instead. Of course, Deborah did intervene at the last minute, but the results were the same. LaGuerta ended up dead.
Thanks.
And it was all for Dexter's convenience and to secure his freedom. It may have been that Dexter was upset with LaGuerta for trying to trick him by releasing Hector Estrada. She knew that Dexter would try to kill Estrada if he truly was the Bay Harbor Butcher, and Dexter fell for it hook, line, and sinker. It could also have been that Dexter was trying to protect his sister Deborah, as LaGuerta was almost definitely going to lock her up as well for assisting Dexter in covering up the murder of the Doomsday Killer, Travis Marshall. Dexter obviously didn't want to be sent to prison, but taking Deborah down with him might have been too much for him to bear. In the end, he saw killing LaGuerta spare himself and save his sister as the only remaining solution.
To protect myself and my sister.
Obviously, with enough mental gymnastics, Dexter can justify killing almost anyone, even individuals who do not meet his father's code. Therefore, with Doakes closing in on him and the feds closing in on Doakes, a time may have come that Dexter believed he had to kill Doakes. He may even have been able to convince himself that it was the right thing to do. The finale of the sequel series, Dexter New Blood, provides another example that indicates the potential outcome of Dexter killing Doakes. Similar to the situation with LaGuerta, at the end of New Blood, Dexter decides to willingly kill an innocent man, Coach Logan. Like Doakes, Logan was also a police sergeant, but for the small town of Iron Lake, where Dexter relocated after leaving Miami. Logan was standing in the way of Dexter's freedom and thus threatening his continued relationship with his son, Harrison.
Don't be a hero, Logan. I just need to get out and see my son.
This would result in the sergeant's demise at Dexter's hands. Dexter was imprisoned after the police chief, Angela Bishop, who was also his increasingly estranged girlfriend, realized that he was involved in the murder of local resident Matt Caldwell. She also deduced that he was probably the actual Bay Harbor Butcher.
And it's how I know that you, Dexter Morgan, are the Bay Harbor Butcher.
So she had to take him in. But while he was in jail, Dexter became overwhelmed and made a snap decision to free himself at the expense of Sergeant Logan's life. He tricked Logan into bringing him a bottle of water, and when he was in his arm's length, Dexter grabbed the sergeant. Once he had Logan subdued, Dexter demanded the keys from him.
Just give me the keys.
Ever the hero, Logan refused, choosing instead to draw his firearm to try defending himself against Dexter. But his shot missed, and Dexter snapped his neck, all in the blink of an eye. Before killing him, Dexter told Logan that,
But this is inevitable.
Dexter begged Logan not to draw his gun before he reacted, killing the man. Like Doakes, he probably would have preferred not to kill Logan, but when it came down to it, he would and did. This is most likely what would have happened to Doakes if Lila had not killed him first. Even if he initiated the frame job, Dexter was likely to have become overwhelmed by the process of the trial, the digging into his personal life, the strife it brought to Deborah and his cover life with Rita. It is very likely that he'd kill Doakes even amidst a criminal trial as the pressure continued to build. Dexter is a killer, and he is not above murdering innocents if it means honoring the first rule of the code to not get caught. He was willing to kill Maria LaGuerta, a prominent member in his department in Miami. He killed Sergeant Logan in Iron Lake to maintain his freedom as well. Why would anyone assume he would not do the same to Doakes if his family and freedom were on the line? With that knowledge, it stands to reason that Dexter probably would have eventually come to the conclusion that Doakes had to die. Though Dexter seemed to be backing off of the idea of killing Doakes as the second season reached its climax, opting instead to frame his rival as the Bay Harbor Butcher, that plan was very precarious. If it didn't work out as he intended, he almost certainly would have decided to kill Doakes. Whether or not Dexter would have had enough of a conscience to feel truly bad for killing Sergeant Doakes is unclear, but he has been known to experience guilt after committing a kill outside of the code before. For instance, Dexter was visibly distraught after killing an innocent man, Jonathan Farrow. Farrow was a photographer Dexter mistakenly thought to be killing his young female models.
That's why I see what I do! Beautiful women!
After taking the man's life, Dexter learned from Angel the next day that it was actually Farrow's assistant who had been killing the models.
Isn't that
Farrell's assistant? I just arrested him for the murder of Estrella Carazo.
The assistant had been taken into custody with solid evidence. Dexter realized that he'd broken the code for the first time, and it really disturbed him. He was eventually able to move on, but his dedication to the code was illustrated through his experience. Still, Dexter would go on to kill a man in cold blood because he was sad about Rita's death.
my wife died and it was my fault?
He tried to kill Maria LaGuerta to save his own skin. He killed one of Deb's boyfriends to make her come home. And finally, of course, Dexter killed Sergeant Logan to escape prison. It's almost as if after he broke the code once, he couldn't stop. At the end of the day, Dexter Morgan is a murderous sociopath. That is why he was able to kill people who did not fit the code without losing much sleep. Also, Doakes and Dexter had a long-standing beef, and Doakes had killed more people in line of duty than any other officer. Dexter may have used these facts to justify killing Doakes. Without Lila there to remove the problem for him completely, Dexter would have had to make a decision that compromised the few morals he actually did cling to. Given his track record, there is no reason to believe that he would not have killed Doakes. If Dexter wanted to avoid being caught, which he obviously did, murdering Sergeant James Doakes could have easily become the only way out in his eyes. Had this happened, however, the rose-colored glasses through which most fans tend to view Dexter would have been broken, allowing for a more sober understanding of what and who he truly is. For better or for worse, Dexter really is a selfish liar and a serial killer, even if he does usually only kill the murderers of the innocent. He is a monster who negatively affects everyone close to him. Doakes would be no more than a blip on his radar, a temporary obstacle that he'd eagerly eliminate to benefit himself in the long run. Dexter killing Doakes seems like the most obvious outcome had Lila not come along and done it for him. Alternative number 3, Dexter runs. Dexter is not above going on the lam either. After Deb died, Dexter completely abandoned his life in Miami. He even left his own son and the woman he loved, believing that everyone he touched would be doomed to a disastrous fate. Dexter seemed to be ready to run at any time. He had a stash of cash and a bag packed, ready to go in case he needed it to escape the authorities. If Lila had not killed Doakes, and Dexter also chose not to, there is no guarantee that he would not be identified as the Bay Harbor Butcher in due time. Knowing this, Dexter may have decided to run away, and Dexter New Blood shows how well this may have worked out for him. In New Blood, Dexter was able to blend into a brand new community using a false name, Jim Lindsay. He was also able to keep up appearances to maintain this ruse for about a decade while living in Iron Lake. No one suspected him of a thing, and they probably never would have if he had not begun killing again. It didn't help that his new girlfriend was the chief of police, and basically a detective, of course. Even she was fooled for a very, very long time. Until Dexter made the grave mistake of killing Matt Caldwell, no one was onto him.
My dad, he is gonna destroy you!
So it's reasonable to assume that Dexter would have run had his frame job on Doakes been unsuccessful. If he truly was committed to honoring Harry's code at the time, he would have been unable to kill Doakes. But Doakes would have been dedicated to exposing Dexter and clearing his own name. The only remaining option would be to disappear. Dexter was very invested in remaining a free man. Not invested enough to stop killing people, of course, but invested enough to leave his career behind and abandon his own child without ever looking back. Going to jail was never in the cards for Dexter, so why wouldn't he run? He could have gone anywhere that was far enough away, and could have even left the country. And the Bay Harbor Butcher investigation took place before he even had Harrison to consider. Beyond Deborah, there was nothing and no one anchoring Dexter to Miami. Lila killing Doakes was a very lucky break for him, eliminating the need to run, but he very well may have if she had not taken Doakes out. Conclusion. So what would have actually happened if Lila West never killed Sergeant Doakes? It's hard to say exactly, but knowing Dexter, it's pretty certain that he would not have been going to jail no matter what. Even if he had to lie, steal, and kill, Dexter would not have allowed himself to be brought in for his crimes. His first thought was to kill the sergeant, then he decided to try and frame him as the Bay Harbor Butcher, but worse come to worse, it's very probable that he would have become a man on the run. The rules of Harry's code can be contradictory at times. Should Dexter kill an innocent to avoid being caught, or should he allow himself to be caught to save the life of an innocent? It's pretty much a toss-up, but nothing Dexter has ever done suggests that he would let himself go to prison. Knowing that, it's incredibly likely that he would have spared Doakes if he could have helped it, and gone on the run if he needed to. Ultimately, Lila truly saved Dexter from grappling with a major moral dilemma by killing Sergeant Doakes for him that night.